The question is that the motion be agreed to. Materia Ture.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. John Key believes. I think Auckland families on very low incomes will feel so inspired by John Key telling everybody in the country that he believes that low-income families can buy a home. What an aspirational goal he has for the country. He believes that low-income families can buy a home, and my colleague over here asked how would he know? Well, that is a very good question, because not only does he believe, it is a conditional belief, as he set out today, depends on how much money you earn, on the interest rates, where you want to live, the cost of the mortgage, how much deposit you need. It is a conditional belief. So let's not get ahead of ourselves on this. But I think Auckland families who are on very low incomes, who are locked into generation rent, who are struggling to put food on the table, who are struggling to make sure their houses are warm and dry enough to keep their kids well, I'm sure they are terribly inspired by John Key's belief. Because the reality is for these families is they are locked out. John Key he proves over and over again just how entirely out of touch he is with the real lives of New Zealanders, because John Key might believe, but Auckland families know they are locked out of the housing market. 80% of the homes sold in June this year cost more than $500,000. That is a price, $500,000 in Auckland. There are suggestions that it could get to $1 million in a year or so, the average price. Houses are rising, prices are rising, values are rising by $1,000 a week. What wages? Nothing like that. So families simply cannot keep up, they are locked out, and John Key is totally out of touch. Low-income families, in the research that we've been able to get from the Parliamentary Library, have around about an income of less than $700 a week. It's about half the median income. They simply cannot afford to save the $90,000 that's needed for a deposit, let alone then pay the mortgage payments of more than half their income. Those people are locked out. They are the abandoned generation. They are generation rent. And rather than sitting here and saying he believes that they can do better and they should feel all aspirational about that, what we need from John Key is action. Phil Twyford has said today there's only been 300 homes built in the SHAs. It is an inadequate response, given this government has known since 2010 that this country has had then 70,000 too few homes for the population here. And what is government doing? They're not bothering to really invest in a state house building program to increase supply. What they're focused on is selling those state houses off. They're selling those state houses off desperately. They'll sell them to anybody, including to anyone from Australia, including to UK agencies, desperate to sell them off. What they need to be doing is making sure those homes are available to the families who need them. First and foremost, the most vulnerable families who have the lowest incomes and who need to be housed securely and warmly and dryly. But also, if they do want to see New Zealanders owning their own homes, particularly low-income families who struggle to save for a deposit and get access to a mortgage, there is an alternative. It's called progressive ownership. The Green Party has long been proposing progressive ownership as a rent-to-own scheme for low-income families to buy the house that they live in, the state-built house that they live in. Don't sell the state houses to an Australian agency. Sell them to New Zealand families, low-income families, who desperately need them. I mean, if you want to sell off the homes, sell them to the families who need them. Progressive ownership means that a family doesn't have to get a mortgage, so they don't have to save for a deposit. They don't have a debt. They have a relationship with the Housing New Zealand, with the state, with the Crown, that enables them to pay off that home over time, just like you would with a mortgage, but without all of the stress of debt and the deposit saving. And it means those families have a safe, secure home to live in. But no, this government doesn't want New Zealanders to have access to their own homes. They want to sell off the state houses to other agencies so they can wash their hands of the needs of vulnerable families. Auckland families, New Zealand families don't need John Key's belief. They need him to act as a Prime Minister for everyone and not be so totally out of touch. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.